everybody. My name's Kelly McReynolds. I started the RV Park for Sale group. I don't even know. It's probably been 6, 8 months. We're up to 9,100 members now. So we have been getting quite a bit of interest. I noticed Nick Crimmins was answering questions, very knowledgeable, wise about RV park development. And you can tell when people are asking questions or they're answering questions where their knowledge is coming from through repetition or experience and so forth. And Nick, I appreciate you being here. I'd like to just go ahead and get started. And if you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and what you got going on, we'll just start the conversation.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. Like I said, Nick Crimmins, I am in the DFW area. My family has a residential home building company that they've been doing since the late 80s. I joined about 8 years ago when we got into development. So we've been doing custom homes and then started doing self-development for our home building company when infill lots started to become harder and harder to find. So I've been project managing all of our custom home builds and overseeing our residential developments. And then in the last about 18 months, we started getting into RV park developments, and we have a mobile home park development as well. So shifting out of the single family residential into these RV park and mobile home developments. So we've got three that we're doing now.
Can you tell me a little bit about y'all's ideology about the shift? Obviously, people, when they have businesses, they're familiar with the business. They put a lot of resources and time into developing that business and making it successful, building in efficiencies and so forth. And then suddenly they take on a new product or service or aspect of, has a lot of similar components, but it is a new industry, a new realm. What made you guys think about stepping and venturing over into RV parks, RV park development and so forth relative to the custom home building side?
So it was a long-term goal. Growing up, we always went to RV parks and campgrounds over the summers, like in the Ozarks, Lake Ouachita, things like that. So we had a big family background of going to campgrounds and things like that. So we always wanted to get into this long-term for obviously the cash flow purposes, things like that. My parents actually lived in an RV for full-time for a full year back in 2017 to learn about it, learn what the residents needed. So it was always a long-term goal. And then when COVID happened and remote work, the RV boom kind of all started, we said, hey, this is a good transition point. Let's keep doing our home building stuff, but start this up on the side. So it was always a long-term goal. And now we're getting into the aspect of really getting those developments. So it's always kind of something that we wanted to get into.
I'm sure you follow economics and news and so forth, and feeling the crunch from the interest rates and the availability of capital for residential projects, not only development, but also just entry level single family has become more difficult, whether it's you're flipping a house, trying to wholesale a house. If you're a wholesaler, you're doing marketing in that area, or if you're building specs and keeping them build to rent type stuff, duplexes, fourplexes. I'm just finding that the money is getting harder and the margins were just getting squeezed due to the cost of capital. And obviously the other cost, numbers come off quite a bit relative to where it was a year or two ago. And so I think there are some savings there. However, it's just in general gotten more expensive across the board for everything. And so my thought with RV parks and why I've begun to focus my time here is essentially the market share that could afford housing. I think that there's an affordable housing play to the RV park space. Obviously, there's different reasons why people are interested in RV parks, but I feel like affordable housing is one of the reasons why I turned some of my focus over to RV park development, because I feel like that's an additional factor that will continue to add to the demand there. So are you feeling like these RV park developments, are these you guys, or are you guys GCing for investors, or are you guys GCing or running these projects, design build for clients, or are these projects that you guys are going to own?
So the first couple ones, so just to backtrack, I agree with you on the affordable housing aspect. That's definitely one of the main reasons that we're going all in on RV parks and tiny home kind of developments is, right. Lumber, all that. We built a 3-unit townhome, and the lumber package for the entire townhome was $45,000. And then after COVID, the exact same floor plan, exact same lumber package went up to $165,000.
Yeah.
So those are, I mean, it's coming back a little bit now that the market has slowed down, but we are doing these to buy and hold. So these will be our properties long-term. And we have property management in-house. We've hired a couple folks who have experience running RV parks. They've got their propane licensing with the state, so they'll be able to do all that. But yeah, these first couple ones we're going to buy and hold for ourselves. We did the engineering, the horizontal development. We'll actually build the clubhouses and some cabins on there, and then we'll property manage it at the end.
Okay. And so that's very interesting because coming into a project as an owner, you're definitely going to have a different perspective. Obviously, you don't have the client input. It's all about your idea, implementing your idea, designing your idea, managing cost with the goal in mind of having ultimately a high demand, high profit project ultimately that would be an asset under management. So could you talk us through the design or from the beginning? So looking for deals, could you start there, like saying, okay, we're going to look for deals, we're going to find deals. What were you looking for and why? And then just walk through the chronology of that in overview if you can.
Yep. So the first things I look for, I've got big 5 main things that I look for when I'm looking for land. The first one is access. It's got to have like a main corridor. It's got to be easy for folks to get their rigs to and from it. And then you get into kind of the main utility stuff. Water is the big one, then power. Sewer, wastewater, we can, with engineers and all that, we can typically figure that out. Water is really the biggest one, especially in Texas with aquifer recharge zones, water conservation districts. The one we were looking at now, we're actually pulling a water line from 2,100 feet away because we were looking at doing a commercial well. And then we got in with TCEQ, which is the Environmental Quality Control Board here, and then found that we were in a water conservation district. So we could only pump 900,000 gallons a year, but we needed 1.8 million.
Yeah.
So water has been the biggest thing that is the main thing I look for. Access and water. Sewer we can figure out, whether it's on-site septic with an engineer, we can do a wastewater treatment facility. And then the next thing I would look for is internet. I don't think it's technically classified as a utility yet, but I know that there have been discussions or they're talking about it. But especially for us, for long-term tenants that we're trying to get, internet's really a big thing with remote work. So access, water, power, septic or sewer, and then internet would be the kind of the 5 checklists besides topography and flood zone.
Yeah.
Flood zone is not as big of an issue in RV parks because a lot of jurisdictions will let you put RV pads in flood zone because they're not permanent structures. So if the creek starts to rise, you can pull that thing away. So those are the main. Access and water would be the first 2 that I would key on.
Right. And if you don't mind, I'd like for you to touch a little bit more on the TCEQ thing. I mean, I know it's specific to Texas, but the industrial well, I mean, how many conversations have you had with people where they say, oh yeah, we're getting an RV park, it's already got a water well, it's pumping plenty of water, we're good to go, like we're going to add another 2,000 units onto that water well? Do you get that a lot? And can you tell us a little bit more about your experience with TCEQ on those projects?
So I haven't purchased an RV park that's up and running and added onto it. I've only done them from new development.
Okay.
And my experience when I found out that we'd have to do a TCEQ water well, I probably called 30 or 40 drillers around the DFW area. And I said, do you guys do TCEQ water wells? And I'd say 29 of the first 30 were like, no, nope.
Yep.
Don't want to do it. The engineer that we're working with now, we're actually doing a wastewater treatment facility. And so the way TCEQ works is you put in your applications, you get your spot in line, and then it's their world and we just live in it.
That's right.
This is my first experience with TCEQ, with the water well and then the wastewater treatment plant. So we're in line and we're probably 4 to 5 months away from getting review or things like that. So the thing I would recommend with TCEQ is get on it as early as possible. Any of your utilities, your power, your water, your internet, get your site assessment, get your applications in, get a preliminary site plan drawn out with either a civil or just like on graph paper, napkin, submit it to the jurisdictions, and then start those conversations as early in your due diligence phase as possible.
So, I mean, a lot of people that I see in RV park, they're trying to buy existing parks, obviously. You guys are going from raw land, and so you got a lot of other considerations to make. Buying an existing performing park, there's a lot of other considerations to make. but the water to me is huge. And so you ultimately, what you decided with this parcel is to move forward with the water, or the industrial, commercial, community water well, right? So
No, this one actually we ended up running because of the groundwater. We're running a 2,100 foot of water line from JSUD on this one. So that was just in the due diligence, yeah. And then another one we're doing a wastewater treatment facility on. So it's two separate projects.
And so what you're saying is you guys found an existing water district that was about 2,000, 3,000 feet away where you brought a line over, right?
Yes, sir.
And so I'll give you guys a quick example of what happened to me. I bought some raw land. There was a water district that was 2,000 feet away. I said, hey, look, I got a great deal on this land. I had great access to the property off I-20. I said, hey, I'm going to pull that water line over. It's not going to be a big deal. I'll get an easement. I got like one rancher I got to deal with. I'm sure he'll give me an easement to bring that line across his property. Went through the whole process with the water district, the engineer, they sized it up, and ultimately they decided that my parcel was not their priority for the next at least 2 years. So I ended up just selling the property. I subdivided it out and put some houses on it, sold them off FHA, just went with like my third exit strategy that I had on that property. So just make sure you've got 2 or 3 exit strategies if you're not solid with all of what you've got going on with your acquisition. And in that case, they already had 2 homes, mobile homes on them. So I just split the property right down the middle, 2 separate addresses, sold them individually on FHA loans. But if I would have had to drill an industrial well, it would have been a no deal. And I had valued that property at 3.5 million at full density. We were going to have to use sprays on the septic system, so that took up a lot of area. Obviously, the setbacks off water wells, I wasn't going to be able to drill it. I mean, what kind of pricing were you getting back on the industrial well, I guess is my question.
We didn't get to that point because when we started doing some of the due diligence and he got with TCEQ, that's when we found out about the groundwater pumping regulations. So we didn't even get to how deep the water table was, or I know that they're charging about $45 a linear foot for our standard residential wells.
Yeah.
I don't know what the difference is on a commercial well.
I've heard between 500K and 1.5 million. And also that does not include the ongoing maintenance and inspections, the periodic inspections, the service contract, and then the timeline, which nobody considers, is if you can get it approved, if it passes all the tests. I mean, you're talking about a significant timeline, up to potentially 2 years to get it approved. So it's very important, and all states are a little bit different. So that's awesome.
And the one thing about that also, in addition to the cost of just drilling the well, a lot of times you have to drill test wells to test if there's groundwater. So you'll have to drill 2 test wells before you even get to approval. So there's a lot of upfront cost with commercial wells. So if you get one that you're thinking about having to put a commercial well in, definitely do as much due diligence on that as you can, because those prices can rack up real fast.
And another thing that probably nobody even talks about is fire suppression. If you get caught up in fire suppression by nature of the standards that are governing your property, that's just all that means is you need a ton of water real fast all of a sudden, right? And if you're falling under those guidelines, then you're going to have to get that water from somewhere, and that's going to need to be a big water line pumping out a ton of volume. So that could kill your deal right there.
Yeah, that's one of the fire marshal in every county is one of the very first people that we call in due diligence as well. I'm glad you brought that up, because fire suppression, if a lot of times in an RV park, they'll have a 2-inch line run into it. If it's an older park, and then if you're going to upgrade, then you've got to bring it to current standards, and you cannot get fire suppression on a 2-inch line. So big fire suppression, definitely a huge thing to check on. That's a huge thing there.
Yeah, and I mean, you touched on the 2-inch line. People think, I hear a lot, the water's on the edge of the property, the power's on the edge of the property. I hear that a lot, but that's really not going to tell me anything, because I need to know, is the water provider, whether they're a private entity, water district, or a municipality, or whatever the case is, I need to know, are they going to be willing to supply my development with water? So I got to talk to them first. And then power, they may not have the right setup. They may not be set up for 3-phase or however you're going to run your electric. And so sizing up the electrical needs and simultaneously discussing those needs with somebody that knows what they're doing, that's providing power through the network, somebody that's providing water through their network, right? And then you can get the same thing with internet, right? Because I had an 89 unit development in Hill County, south on 35W south of Fort Worth, Hillsboro, Texas, that area right there. Well, I had fiber running right past the development. So I was like, hey, this is cool. No problem. I got fiber. It's all good. Well, when I finally got in touch with my local project manager, basically they didn't have the bandwidth to cover our development. They just didn't, they have to have some kind of booster station or something, and they have to basically bring the internet in and then they have to distribute it out. And ultimately, I got killed on that. It was going to be 89 units. I got killed on water. I got killed on internet.
Yeah.
So I walked away
You can
from that
also
deal.
you can also do Starlink. Have you guys explored that option?
Starlink was just coming online with that project, but I think, what is Starlink running right now, Mike? How much is it?
I'm not sure for the commercial rates. I would have to look that up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's Starlink. If you're developing an RV park, can you bring Starlink in and distribute it out to the development, or as from a commercial standpoint, or does each individual person have to have their own Starlink account and equipment?
I don't know. I don't have any experience with Starlink. So we're using, for ours, we're bringing in a couple of towers, like they're dedicating a tower. It's 137 units. So we're working with NextLink. It's in Grandview, so just north of Hillsboro. So say that they didn't have the bandwidth, so we're putting in a tower, and then we're doing the water line, and then we're actually having to upgrade Johnson County's one of their pump stations for the capacity for the water. So all of that. And a lot of times when you're doing new development, one of the very first things when you're checking water, when you contact the utility district, they will have you do a non-standard application and they'll run a hydraulic analysis. So you'll say, hey, I'm doing 137 RV spots. It's at this line. And they'll come back and they'll say, yep, you've got to run 2,100 feet of 8-inch brand new line. You've got to do so many pump upgrades. And that's typically almost always development pays for development. So that's going to have to be absorbed into your project costs.
Yeah, that's the thing. Just because they have a water line next to your property, every water district, they have typically an engineer that they hire. They keep them on retainer. Their network, they're running their sizing on their network, and they're deciding if your project is a priority for them to provide water to relative to all the other customers that may be jumping up and down saying, hey, I need water over here. I need water over there. So, I mean, that's awesome. All of those things that you're discussing, people that are developing, they're going to find out eventually. And it's cool that you solve those problems. Did any of those problems come up post ownership of the land? And did you get lucky that you were able to solve those problems, or did you get all that done prior to ownership of the property?
So this project, actually, we bought about 1.5 years ago, and it was out in the county, and we had planned to just chop it up into 2-acre lots and do homes. And with all the development, when we were between our preliminary plat and our final approval of that, Johnson County wanted us to do groundwater testing because they were worried about all the development. So long story short, that drilling those 2 test drills and waiting 6 months, that kind of made that project non-feasible. So then we looked at 1-acre parcels, and if the yield would be there. Still didn't work because of with access, you can only run 600 feet of a cul-de-sac, and we couldn't get the yield, the lot layout's a dog leg, so we couldn't get the yield that we needed to make the numbers work. So we fell backwards into an RV park on this one, just being out in the county. So yeah, we solved 3 or 4 big problems along the way, and it just worked out because it was out in the county. We wanted to do one, and our engineer had a lot of familiarity with RV parks in Johnson County. So we solved it. It changed 3 or 4 times throughout the project because of problems that arose during the engineering phases.
Yeah. Was there any particular tone or from the county, like Johnson County, was there a lack of education there, or were they holding you up for any reason, or were they happy to have you develop an RV park in Johnson County?
We met all of their subdivision requirements and platting requirements. So, I mean, we're doing 30-foot wide roads. We're doing private fenced yards. So, I mean, we're doing a really nice upscale RV park. And when we were doing it, the staff at the county we had applied for a variance to see if, since we were the builder, like if we don't have groundwater, they were worried that a bunch of these developers were coming in, selling these lots, and there was no groundwater there. And so we were like, well, we're the builder, So if there's no groundwater, it's our problem. It was going to set precedent. When they have it on record as allowing one developer to not do the groundwater test, then everyone else can point to that. So that was their reasoning for it, which, I mean, I understand. They don't want, we got to make sure that there's groundwater and utilities and everything for that. So they were very open. The staff was very open and willing to work with Commissioner's Court, apply for variances, say, hey, you guys could maybe do this. And typically I've worked in Mansfield, Kennedale, City of Fort Worth, Arlington. If you go in and chat with the city folks and the planning and zoning staff and chat with them, they usually will help you along the way, is what I found. But yeah, Johnson County was very open and helpful in the process.
However, it can be a little sketchy if you don't have that definitive yes in writing where they're giving you that approval and you've got all this time and obviously finances invested into this project. And ultimately, you're looking for a use that you're going to be able to have what I call entitled, right? Fully entitled, because ultimately what's going to happen on the back end of the project, like when the project is done and it's seasoned and y'all have had it for 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years, and you go to underwrite or you go to sell the property, the sophisticated underwriters or financial institutions that employ the underwriters, they're essentially going to make sure all the boxes have been checked off if they're going to invest their capital into that project as the lender on the deal to the end buyer. And so really the way that you're going about it is how all RV park developers or RV park acquirers people that are acquiring RV parks existing, they should be thinking about all of this. Just because the numbers look good, because somebody told you the numbers look good, number one, the reason you know that the numbers look good is because you're looking at bank statements and tax filings that back up the trailing 12 or trailing 24 rolls, right? You're looking at the revenue. That's how you're going to guarantee the revenue, or that's what a bank and underwriter would do want to do to guarantee the revenue. Obviously, you got hard money lenders and things like that. They're going to be running when you try to sell that to another entity, whether it's one of your entities or another entity for someone else. If the financial institution knows what they're doing, they already are aware of all these things that you're discussing, and they're going to check it. And if you went into a deal and you quote unquote bootlegged it and got the brother-in-law treatment and you got it done and you're making great money and you're telling everybody how awesome this park is and everything looks great, it may be worth $5, $6, $7 million 10 years from now. But if you forgot to get this and that and whatever done and you really don't have that formal entitlement, guess what? It's probably worth half or even less. And it's probably going to have to be some type of creative financing, or you'd have to get somebody to loan you the money that really didn't know what the heck was going on, right? So you're going to run into that problem when you get ready to sell the property. So I think that the way that you're doing it is definitely the professional way of handling it. So yeah, and so I'd like to open it up for any questions that anybody has. It looks like we've got 11 people in here today. Does anybody have any questions for Nick? He's very knowledgeable. He's got a lot of stuff going on right now. He can probably help you. You probably have to unmute yourself, by the way.
I have a few questions. Hi, I'm Justine. Good to be here today. I'm interested in tiny homes. Does anyone have experience with that? And there's different restrictions and regulations. I'm from Pennsylvania and I have RV community, mobile home communities right now. So I'm trying to transition one of my communities into tiny homes. And they don't have any laws written for that right now. So it's odd. It's similar to RV, but not. Any experience?
So we are actually planning some of our RVs. They're going to be RV tiny home communities. So we can do a couple things. We looked at purchasing cabins or what are like park models to put in some of them. And then basically what we found out is we can build them cheaper for ourselves. So we build them basically the same way we build any single family residential. We send out, we get the plans, we send bids out, we build it to International Builders Code. And we build it the same way that we build any single family house. So they're just smaller. They're 400 to 800 square feet, but we built them the exact same way we've built any of our single family homes. And then when we were looking for people, if we were going to purchase them basically off site, we made sure that we toured their facility, made sure they were building them to the International Building Code. The main reason that we decided to build them ourselves as opposed to modular is when we were looking for development and construction loans, none of the lenders will include in the construction loans modular offsite builds. So you have to, and then of course, for all the kind of modular, you've got to pay for them up front. So for us to order 30 to 40 tiny homes, we didn't have the cash flow to forward all that. So you may run into some lending things. So that's why we ended up building them ourselves.
And you're doing new construction, whereas I have a mobile home community, which I want to convert. So they're older mobile homes that when the people age out, I'm either remodeling a mobile home into a tiny home or I yank it and I put something else on. So I'm trying to convert an existing mobile home into a really cute tiny home community because my parcels are very small. And as I pull one out, and if there's a vacancy, I have to fill it with the same size because of grandfathered laws.
Okay.
So it's an advantage, but a disadvantage in many ways. So you're doing something new construction. I'm just building from an existing mobile home facility or manufactured home. So, and I don't want to mix RVs and mobile homes together. I personally don't like the way it looks. That's all that boils down to. It's just aesthetics for me. So my goal is when I speak to people, because I have 2 vacancies already, and I'm keeping my eye open for something maybe I can just pull in, set up, and it's either a park model or a tiny home, but I want to keep consistency in appearance. I don't want it to, I'm not looking to get the Stepford Wives or anything look, but I'm looking for consistency in maybe colors or the way that they're set or something of that nature. But the infrastructure is already there. I have a existing private well. I'm a drinking water operator, so I know what's going on. It's public sewer. It's just a matter of a conversion. So I appreciate your insight to new construction because I'm also at some point going to venture down the road of an RV community. I keep my eye open on this on Facebook and everything, and you guys popped up. I'm like, wow, this is cool to really listen into this. And, because whether you're doing a new construction or you're taking something existing, it'll be an all new world for me.
Yeah, and then I know a couple folks around here have converted mobile homes to RV or tiny home or whatever, the same way you're doing it. The only thing I'd say is if you're in city limits or county limits, just talk to the jurisdiction and say, this is what I'm doing. How can I go about this? What's the best way to work with you guys? And they should help you out.
They've approached me because being that I'm a woman, I think that's where they're trying to work with. So they have some minority in this, but they've asked me to start doing their bylaws for the county. I don't know if I want to get into that. That sounds like a heck of a lot of work.
You'd be surprised because the connections that'll open up, like you'll be able to do all of your parks down the road. They'll know, yeah, you need to get with Justine. She knows what she's doing. She wrote all our bylaws. So yeah, I mean, I think you've already got a great in. I would just chat with them and keep doing what you're doing because it sounds like you're on a good path already.
Hey, Justine, also, I did want to say I put my number in there for anybody that wants to contact me. I encourage anyone that wants to drop their contact information into the comments, please do so. I have a buddy. He set up a tiny home manufacturing facility in a warehouse in Fort Worth. His name's Eric Robb. And he was building them, cranking them out, but ultimately he could not build them and sell them at the margin he needed to sell them at. But, they were nice, just like what Nick was describing, granite countertops and so forth. He had a couple of them that he wanted to sell. He said he would do some creative financing on them as well. I think there were 2 model homes for him. You may want to shoot me a text. I'll send you his contact and you can see if he's still got those units if you'd like to purchase them. I think he was somewhere in the neighborhood of between 50 and 70 for those units, but I'm not sure what he would do on financing. So
terrific. I'll look at that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'm not sure if you guys can hear me. Kelly, Scott here.
We can hear you.
Hey, Nick, thanks for joining and sharing some knowledge, brother. Looking to do a development in an RV park and just curious to I'm not sure what kind of stage you're at with your Grandview development, but what are you seeing for kind of loan terms in general, from down payment to interest rates to a variety of things if you're getting a loan, unless you're funding it all yourself?
No, definitely not. So we got private investors. We partnered with a capital firm in a mastermind that I'm in, and they're raising the down payment. So right now we're seeing anywhere from 65 to 80% loan to cost. It's okay. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Their RV parks have it's a niche. So I've probably talked to 40 or 50 lenders. We just had our final approval meeting with the county yesterday. So we should have our full entitlements next week. And then we have a couple loan term sheets. One is 65%, and then we're working on one today that's 80% loan to cost.
Nice.
And so, yeah, we're trying obviously to do that when we can get up to 30% down with our private capital, and we're paying them, it's just a debt. So they're getting 12%. That's just a simple debt. And then I think on the terms for the loan, I think it's between 10 and 12%. It's a standard. The one that we're getting 80% loan to cost is American National Bank. So it's just a standard bank. So we'll see. They're reviewing the file now, but that's the base what we're seeing, 65 to 80% loan to cost. And then 12 to 18 months is typically what you can get on a development loan. You can sometimes stretch to 24 months, but that's what we're seeing numbers wise.
Yeah, so what you're saying, Nick, for the people that may not be familiar, is you're raising the capital for the 20 to 30 to 40% down relative to the additional development funds that you need to complete the project. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Yep.
And then that private capital is coming in at, you said 12% on for this deal, and then the development loan, the construction loan, is coming in also at between 10 and 12 is what kind of term sheet you're seeing?
Yes, sir.
Right.
Yep.
And but these are construction loans, so they're probably going to be on draws. And then obviously, if you accomplish all this, which it sounds like you're really close and you've got options, but when you guys acquired this land, it was almost a couple years ago, right? And so the rates have changed. What about the back end? Once you guys have gotten, how long are you going to carry these loans? Let's say 12 to potentially 24 months. And then what's going to happen when those loans come due? What are you going to have to do?
So we're going to have to refi into a permanent loan, more of a conventional loan. So we're actually in the process right now with the capital groups of trying to start a fund to purchase some of these properties. But yes, in 12 to 18 months, we'll refi out to, we've had calls with, if we have to sell this first one to like Marcus and Millichamp or some of those big broker type guys, we may have to flip this one for capital and then move on to the next project. But yeah, 12 to 18 months refi is the goal. Yep.
And so you mentioned a fund, an acquisition fund, which is interesting and definitely a great solution. Typically, would you say, are those like, do you call those, or are you familiar with them as PPMs or private placement memorandums for raising capital into on a project by project basis for that fund? Or would it be more of a, could you explain a little bit more about how, if you know, how that could work? Because that capital ultimately, won't you have to offer like 70% of the profits or 60 to 80% of the profits, and then, you know, the entity managers, owners for the LLC, they would get like 20 to 30% of the profits, and then you don't really guarantee a return. You can't legally through SEC, but you would essentially give them a percentage of the profits upon disposition when you get ready to sell it as an entitled property. I don't know if any of that makes any sense or not.
It makes sense in the fact that I understand the vocabulary now, but I am wading out into deep waters that I'm unfamiliar with. So I've been the project manager, the construction guy, and my partner, she's the financial person. So I'm just now learning, and we've never done a fund. We've always self-developed our own projects. So I'm learning that as well, how it's going to work. So basically the way we're going to do is we'll operate, we'll do what we do, and then the capital folks will handle the fund. And yeah, we're working on the breakdown, all that kind of stuff. Cause it's a lot, but I cannot speak intelligently on
well, I think,
that much more.
I think it's pretty simple. If you simplify it in thinking, put yourself in the shoes of the investor, what's going to get them excited, right? And so most people I'm seeing, if they're not going to get 12 to 15%, if they've got a surplus of capital or access to cheaper capital that they can deploy that capital and make a return on that cash, the simplicity of it is, how are you going to sell that project to an investor, right? And so, and then what returns should they expect? And I think your ability to perform on what you tell them you're going to do and the time that it takes to do that, and then a percentage of those investors are going to be like, well, hey, Nick, thanks for the ride, man. We appreciate the hard work. Great return on this project. You're amazing. Hey, we're ready to reinvest. I mean, that's how you're going to develop your private investor network, by taking care of the ones that do put their faith in you, and ultimately they can share those stories and refer you as a legitimate business person. That basically, you're describing two routes to go. One would be traditional financing of a bank at the end, and the bank is going to want to know what? They're going to want to know your entitlements are all checked off. They're going to want to know they're going to want to see your T12 and your T24, which is all cool, but everybody knows how to use Excel or Google Sheets, is what we use. So you can build anything you want to build, but then that's where the bank statements come in. The bank statement doesn't lie, because every time you go down to the store, get you a bag of Skittles, or you get whatever you get, you go on vacation, you do all these things with that operating account, suddenly the bank is like, what the crap are y'all doing over there? And so, yeah, you really got to keep your financials separate and clean and ready to go to the bank whenever that time comes. And I always say you got to have enough fuel for the jet so that you don't come crashing down. You got to keep the fuel in it. So you really got to plan ahead. And so, like on the projects or business acquisitions that we're looking at right now, everybody wants what they want for their land. Everybody wants what they want for their performing asset, whatever asset class it is. But at the end of the day, if you just take their tax returns and their financials and their bank statements, financials could be fabricated as well. If you take that over to the bank, and let's say you had 3 banks that were lending on this asset class, just drop that stuff off at the bank and say, send me a number on what you guys are going to loan on it. And hey, there's your offer. So if you know that going into the project, and so I think you just need to do some trajectory analysis on interest rates. Obviously, it's up in the air what's going to happen with interest rates and so forth. Do some trajectory analysis on demand, occupancy, and vacancy. And then obviously you can do your cost analysis. So what your carry cost is going to be once you roll up that money, whether it's private money is really cool because you're committed. You have to be committed to pay them back and give them their return. However, based on the way that you write up the deal, the PPM, the private placement memorandum, if you don't sell that deal, you're still in control of the deal. If the timing is not right to sell the deal, you don't sell it. You can't sell it. You may not be able to sell it, right? And so keep that in mind with this private capital. Sometimes that's the way to go. But at the end of the day, when you do ultimately sell it, you don't know what their returns are going to be, because they may, if they're getting 70% of the profits, let's say you had 10 guys that came in with 200,000 a piece or something, you needed 2 mil, you technically can't tell them what their return is going to be, but you can show them what your cost is going to be for the project from your experience as a developer. And then you can show them what your revenue is going to potentially be, which could give you an idea of what the value of the property would be upon completion and quote unquote seasoning with the revenue, right? So I always say, just think all the way to the end. What's going to happen at the end? And then reverse engineer it. Obviously, in the past few years, you could make all the mistakes in the world and still be profitable on a project just because of the trajectory of values and so forth with inflation and all the things that we're all learning and getting more familiar with, and hopefully will make us wealthy one day. Right now, it's a little bit of a challenge. So yeah, it sounds like you're heading in the right direction. Does anybody else have anything? And if you want to speak about any of that, Nick, yeah, feel free, man. Sorry, sometimes I elaborate a little too long.
No, you're good. I'm gonna join with you on that one. We actually hired a third-party CFO to run a full financial model for the RV park and kind of preparation for what kind of returns, how could we standardize this process with our engineer and our horizontal. So we hired a third-party CFO that she ran occupancy, 5-year projection, cash on, like a whole bunch of stuff that like it's a whole bunch of, and then she came with enterprise values, all that kind of stuff.
Wow.
And then they'll use that once we get hammered down on this project. That's what we'll reverse engineer the fund on. This is what we did on the first project. This is what we think is comfortable, and then we'll build it out that way. So yeah, we tried to hire someone who had all that knowledge and experience to help us reverse engineer and back into what we think we could promise people.
That's smart, man. That is the smartest thing that you can do, and that's definitely an experienced developer talking there, because things feel like you can get it cheap, but man, if you don't do the proper projections and you end up in that deal with more cost than what you expected, which ultimately is every project that you ever get involved in. But just be conservative with your estimates and let a professional underwriter, aka CFO, accountant, CPA, tell you, hey, you think this is where you're going to land? Okay, here's what you're worth when you land there. And now you just got basically time and money that you've got to spend to get to that point. Anybody else?
I was just going to suggest maybe syndication is another way other than PE funds, and building a fund, something like that, because it comes in the same system. And I'm new to this. I just was introduced to maybe this because we're talking about building a fund potentially. But then we talked about someone else suggested syndication. We're looking into that. I'll introduce myself. I'm Rusty Tabor, Central Texas, just north of San Antonio, southeast of Austin, in the Hill Country, for those that know. We built a small RV park about 30 years ago and looking to expand for the most part. So I come from oil and gas, so I have no idea how to do it. Just trying to learn, and been on the venture for about a month.
So
I do
this
have
was
business experience with getting PE money and seeing the downfalls that Kelly did say. Don't ever sign anything you're not happy with. That's always, you can look at that money and there's people that will work with you to a little bit more to your advantage on the PE side and stuff like that. And some of them that definitely won't. And I say the bigger ones won't, the smaller ones will. Y'all had a lot of great information, and I don't know whether to be scared or excited because we have a major water problem, but hopefully we can work through that. We're going through a lot of growth in our area, but we're rural still. So water's not here, sewer's not here, but we're looking on ways to overcome that. But sure appreciate all the information y'all gave us today.
Hey Rusty, you said you mentioned that you built an RV park, or you bought, or did you buy an existing RV park that had already been built?
No, 1998. We were in Florida. We're from San Antonio, but my dad came back. My parents came back, bought some property, and it was just raw land. He just built an RV park because he retired at 50 years old and figured it'd be a pretty easy way to make a little bit of money along the way. And no really professionalism in that. He just designed it on some paper, and we're underneath all the regulations. So, and at the time for sure, now it's maybe questionable, but it's provided a pretty good living for my mom. And my dad passed last year, so I had to come home, take care of my mom, and just trying to look at what the best use of the land going forward for the family. RV parks are very interesting right now, and kind of the mixed model of RV parks, tiny homes, rental sales, and all that's included. But so I was looking for a network of people in my new field, so to speak, because I don't know anybody in RVs. And so when I came across this, and I'm glad I joined today.
Well, Rusty, we're glad you came, and that's a great story. I'm sorry to hear about your dad, of course.
Thank you.
Sounds like he was definitely a good dad, because, I mean, obviously he helped out, and you guys are still seeing the fruits of his labor, and your mom has been taken care of because of the efforts that he made quite a bit ago. I graduated high school back to 6, so that's about the time when I guess it sounds like you guys were taking on that RV park. So yeah, I appreciate you sharing. Mike is in here. He's a professional engineer. He's licensed in multiple states, so you can definitely reach out to him for any type of engineering that you may need. He can do full civil sets and so forth. Mike, I haven't heard from you today, man. Sorry I jumped in a little quick there and I didn't give you a chance to introduce yourself. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you've been up to and what you could help with potentially?
Yeah, so living in my airstream, traveling the US, specifically the coastal states, looking at opportunities for RV park developments and marinas as well. Currently, I'm providing due diligence services as well as sketch plan, and we're looking into getting into full construction set as well. The whole land development is composed of a lot of elements. A lot of professional services are required. So I think the first thing that I would advise on people to do is to develop their design team to fill in all the roles that's necessary moving forward. It's difficult to get into this industry all by yourself. So that's why I recommend you starting off with that design team build.
So I guess that's what I've been doing over the first few days. I'm fairly educated in construction, underground and above ground, but I've learned that's not going to be the case, especially with TCEQ if we build this, because I will have to go through them. There are, as far as I know, looking for a line. I don't know if that's a possibility or not. It may be 10 miles from me or more as far as water is concerned. I'd love to get a hold of you, Mike, if you would contact me, or I'll put my information in here once we get off. I'm going to have to jump off here in just a minute. But that's what I found is that, so on that question, is feasibility more important than getting the engineering done? Because that's where I'm at right now today. Do I do a feasibility to see if it makes financial sense, or make the assumption it will make financial sense upon the approval of water and sewer?
You would have to take a look at your site specifically to see what it's capable of. You mentioned expansion, so the first thing I would recommend to do is to do that due diligence feasibility study to see how much you can expand, and from there we'll draft the sketch plan and then take it to the pre-app meeting and get feedback from the zoning council and move forward.
Thank you. And I'm putting in my information right now. If you would just send me your contact information, and maybe we can get together next week. I've reached out to a few. I just don't know who we're going to handle yet. Got a couple more interviews is what I call them, as far as the PE on the wastewater and the water side. And then I do have some bids or quotes, so to speak, for feasibility and that sort of thing to go into loans. So I'd love to talk to you going forward. And you do have experience with RV parks, so and we do want to build something to where this is a springboard into a bigger future as far as RV park. Because like Kelly, I see the homes, the availability of homes and the cost of homes, especially in my area, and it's probably pretty similar up there, Dallas Fort Worth, where you couldn't buy a house, a single family home right now, $500,000-600,000, and you get a couple that just graduated from college looking for something to do. I think that's going to be that first time home buyer doesn't really have anything out there on the market. And I don't know if this is the way, but it may be the way. I don't know. All the money that's going into single family homes right now is insane. And that's on the PE side. But thank you so much, guys. I got to jump off of here for another call, and you'll probably be hearing from me, guys. Kelly and Nick and Mike, just if I can pick your ear or something like that, if I come across that, because I do not. I know I don't know enough, and this is a family venture. It's me, my brother, and my mom, and our families, and I don't really have the opportunity to make mistakes.
That's right. Well, that's the beauty of this group, the network. Obviously, some of us are service providers. Mike is a professional engineer, licensed, and I own a septic business. So we do design, build septic systems, commercial, residential. So I have a few other businesses also, custom home building business. I'm a developer. I have 86 lots right now, horizontal development. I buy and sell land, do development on different projects. I've got about 5 million in residential custom client cost plus contracts right now. And I'm looking to develop some of the land that I have right now. However, the cost of capital was not great at the moment. So I'm looking at selling. I'm selling some of the land that I have, and just got a lot of different things going on. So there's a lot of help that I think that everyone can get just in a short conversation, just pointed conversation. I think there's a lot of people that are definitely willing to help you and help everyone in this group. I think it didn't seem like very many people were. I was trying to get my questions answered and with the RV park development stuff that I was involved in. And ultimately, I felt like I was getting washed out for political reasons or whatever. And so I set this group up. We've got 9,100 members in this group now. Probably 5,000 of them are spammers that are trying to do skip tracing or provide you with lists or maybe sell you some Bitcoin or something like that. But I wanted to come on here and just show that I'm real, Nick's real, Mike's real. Everyone that's joined today and asked questions, you guys are real. And I think everybody's willing to help. And I'm looking forward to helping you guys, whether that means you guys hire me to do your septic systems or hire Mike to do due diligence and feasibility, or if you just need a little bit, have a few questions, we can point you in the right direction. I just want to say thanks, Nick, a ton. I've never met Nick in person before, but I was just noticing the value that he kept giving to everyone. He was just an open book, and I love hanging out with people that are just high quality human beings. You just can't go wrong associating yourself with high quality human beings. So I appreciate everybody coming today.
I appreciate it, Kelly, and everyone that showed up. If anyone has any questions or anything like that, I am more than happy to help and help point you in the right direction. So feel free to reach out anytime. I sell here on Facebook, wherever.
I'm wrapping it up, guys. We'll see you guys out there.